carrying surety for your actions to we the and down the road as we all really work to get our carrying and play the video of the hearing and what kind of went on during it, and then right after that we'll come back and we'll get into the interview. So here we go. Ourselves and resolve to rightfully understand everyone's rights in the context of this meeting. The meeting was respond accordingly. This meeting belongs to both. So, with all of those things in mind, Marbury v. Madison, Arizona Constitution, Article 2, Section 1, Arizona Constitution, Article 2, Section 2, we're just, reinstating the public, thing. We are giving notice based on this action.
Yes.
I'd like to
Marbury versus Madison overrides any of your decorum or your made-up rules.
This meeting is now adjourned. Sellers running for the hills. We the people will have answers.
You are being served. 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 You are being served.
We will vote in new officials.
It shouldn't be like this. It's only like this.
You are treasonous.
Because you guys are just corrupt. It shouldn't be like this.
William.
Do your job.
Sovereigns are ready to go ahead and hold meeting. Since they have indicated we are ready to go ahead and sign in volunteers.
All right.
Out of necessity for the Republic of Arizona, it is our job. Then you are now committing an act of treason. This is my right to free speech, sir.
They're out. You've done your job. Elected them.
At 12 signatures, which means each individual person is personally liable for over $21 million just from this paperwork. And guess what? We, the people, as body sovereign, we're really good at gathering signatures. So I'm sure we can go gather another 30,000 if they like. Once they go into default and they don't respond to our opportunity to cure, which is to resign within minutes, they need to resign within 3 days. If they don't resign within 3 days, they will be personally served with a writ of quo warranto and an opportunity, again, to rebut any one of our claims, which I'm making right now. None of them have signed an oath of office. None of them are bonded to we the people. All of them are foreign invaders acting as government. They are not our government. Therefore, we will be serving them a writ of quo warranto with a waiver of tort, and if they still do not rebut, we'll be notifying the military. And they can be hauled off, to a military tribunal, and I think we all know the penalty for treason.
Yes.
Hello, my name is Michelle Klann, and I'm here today to put you on public notice. And I'm here to inform you that you are not our elected officials. None of you have ever signed an oath of office to the Republic of Arizona. Instead, you signed an oath of office to a foreign corporation, which means this is an act of insurrection. You do not have a proper bond carrying surety for our actions to be the people. Due to the voter fraud, you've never been formally voted in. Acting as if you are authority over the people is a direct act of treason. Today, the body sovereign are presenting with you each a notice of liability and an opportunity to cure. The fine is $1.7 million per claim, and there are 12 signatures, which means you're each personally liable for over $21 million. If you do not resign within 3 days, you'll be presented with a writ of quo warranto and a waiver of tort. If you do not rebut these truths, you will remain in office. We will be notifying the military, and your act of treason will be grounds for an immediate military tribunal. We do not need to tell you the penalties for treason.
We, the body sovereign, hereby command you to resign within 3 days or else face the consequence. I am also here today to hand you this jump drive, which contains a 5,000-page document notifying you of all the dangers of the COVID vaccine and the poison in the water, to name a few. These are high crimes and acts against humanity. If you cover up high crimes, you'll be held guilty of committing acts of humanity yourselves. Therefore, I hereby command you to send a public broadcast to every single resident in Maricopa County, notifying them of these dangers. And within the next 3 days, if you do not do this, you will be in direct violation of your supposed duty, making you even more accountable for your actions. Notice to agents is notice to principal. Each and every one of you is served. Thank you very much.
And we the people, we did not clear out. Now we're going to go and serve them. Take care. Oops. All right, here we go. We are coming over. We're serving them on the 7th floor. They think they're going to get out of this serving. That ain't going to happen. Here we go.
When they shut us off like that, it just shows how big a concerts they are. They
Yeah.
love to run.
Yes.
They love to block your freedom of speech.
Yes.
I want you to think you don't just have to serve some papers. You can serve papers anywhere, guys. You can just send them to the public buildings. They're served.
But it's always much more personal when you take it in.
They all have home addresses, and the military will find
Yeah, they will. Okay, great. Here we go. 7th floor.
Yes,
And they-
indeed.
And they ran for the hills. It's a beautiful thing. And what is that Q drop we keep talking about? What happens when people learn the truth? What happens when the people wake up? They will not be able to walk down the street. The Great Awakening.
George said it himself, didn't he?
I think what you're seeing there is a preview of many things to come and many scenes to come, kind of like what we saw in 2020 after the lockdowns when the parents started waking up, and it started small, where you started getting rumblings of people showing up to these school board meetings, and look at what's happened with that. So I love it. I love it.
This is what our republic is all about. And people have to take action. People have to stand up for their rights. And we have to move forward and acquire those rights. And this lady is giving us the groundwork. Template's right there. Let's listen and learn.
Yep. Pay close attention, guys. Enjoy the interview with Miki Klann. And thanks for tuning in. Okay, so Miki Klann, welcome to Channel 17. Thank you for doing this today. Mark, welcome as always. And Miki, you've been going pretty viral lately. And as I mentioned to you before the show, before we got started, once I kind of saw what was going on, I saw a couple of your interviews. I read everything about what went on in Maricopa County. Mark and I both really wanted to get you on, and mainly because, as you know, with our audience here, we have a group of people that are very awake, obviously following Q and everything that's going on with the military and all the behind the scenes stuff, but they're also, very intimately familiar, I would say, with the Organic Act of 1871, Admiralty, maritime law, the way that they've, usurped our Constitution, created this corporate construct from the federal level all the way down to the local level, and we're all very familiar with it. And as I mentioned, I think that very often people especially these last 3 or 4 years, as we've been waking up to all these different things going on, I think there's a big disconnect between what we talk about optics all the time, and there's a disconnect right now between what's actually happening and what people perceive is happening. And what you are doing, what you've been doing for really the better part of 3 years now, and especially as it's been coming to light recently, to me is the exact kind of thing that our audience is looking to latch onto, because this is real, tangible stuff. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's not rumors. These are actually tangible actions that are being taken at the local level that, I do believe is going to, what you're about to present here is going to resonate very well with our audience and really lay out a roadmap for things that we're going to be doing, now and down the road as we all really work to get our freedom and our republic back. So I guess could you start out by telling us a little bit who you are, how you ended up here today, and then we can obviously go into the more recent events after that.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for having me, Dave and Mark. It's a pleasure to be here. When I first hit the scene 2.5 years ago, I dropped so much because we were all following Q at the time. And I had identified the fact that the book of the prophecy of the book of Revelation was all coming true. It was all lining up with drops. It was all lining up with the prophecy and everything Trump was doing on the ground. And he actually told us via comms in 2013 that there was this awesome new clock at Trump Jupiter, and it would look so good between range and putting green will happen. Well, that was all code to tell you guys there's an awesome new clock. Look at the zodiac above, said in the end time prophecy that the devil would manipulate time and nature. We don't know the time. The only way to truly tell is when you see the sign and the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, which we saw September 17th, 2020. And what happened just after? And sorry, September, my bad. We saw the sign of the Son of Man September 23rd, 2017. Okay, that was the middle of the book of Revelation, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon at her feet, and a crown of 12 stars above her head. She's crying out in pain because she's about to give birth. Well, we saw that exact sign in the heavens. It only shows up every 7,000 years. So when you see that, I went back 3.5 years and did the comms, and then I went forward 3.5 years, and I laid it all out. Trump saying, Trump Jupiter, it's just like the three wise men, okay? Watch Trump, watch Jupiter, watch what he does. He gained all of his power. He got every country to capitulate while the Jupiter planet was in the womb of the Virgo, doing a full 42-week gestation. The Jupiter comes out. The very first thing we saw was a Vegas shooting, and then we got our first drop. So it said specifically that that God would send an angel for a message for every nation, tribe, and people. And that's exactly what Q was. It was an opportunity to look at things differently, right? It was almost a wake-up call that like caused the masses to pause. And when the masses pause, that collective consciousness causes the powers that be to have to turn up and dial up the fear, which they did. And so we're all standing in awe as we watch and learn that almost everything we've ever learned is not real, including our own government, and that we're giving power to this fake, phony, false corporation who can move the goalposts whenever they want. All I could think of after, getting into this type of research and getting into the biblical aspect and getting to the fact that this really, it's inevitable that we win. It is inevitable. Because once you see something different, that things has to start changing. So remember, we paused. We all looked at this pyramid system and we paused. And that's just enough to let the powers that be know they're in big trouble. Now, when we take right action, there's nothing they can do to stop. We are now outsmarting the devil in this realm. We now see his playbook. We see that he had to follow the law. He had to follow the laws of the universe. And the laws of the universe say what we manifest is what we spend our attention on. So if we keep watching fake, phony, false governments and we keep giving them our authority and we keep watching fake news and we don't tell the real news, and the real news is what's really happening on the front line now. The real news are the heroes every single day stepping up, using lawfare, the same way they took us out, to switch the playbook and take it back. And I want to tell you, there are so many hometown heroes. There are so many things happening. We've already pierced through the veil, meaning it's 90% spirit, 10% paperwork. It's a holy war. Even when we were doing Bonds for the Win, we were scared. It was palpable standing up to authority. But once you do it once, it's easier and easier and easier. In fact, I served my school board that letter of intent to file a claim against their surety bond. They came back 7 days later, voted 7-0, no more masks. Well, actually 5-0 on my board. No more masks. But then I had Wendy Rogers call me up months later and say, hey, how would you like to come speak in front of the Senate? I'm trying to pass a bill that would hold employers liable for and I said, absolutely. And she gave me notice at 11 p.m. that night. I showed up at 8 the next morning. I'm writing my speech inside. I was fearless, And so it's the more you do it, the more you penetrate that shield, the easier it becomes. And I don't think that we're going to just get rescued. I don't think that's going to happen. If we don't have to fight for our republic, I don't think we can ever hold it. I think that the influence of the Q is teaching us to connect the dots, to use our influence, to use our intuition. And I think everyone has influence now because we all have followers. And so we do need to join forces and do that, and empower one another, because we don't have any power arguing with pirates. We don't have any power there, guys. They know how to keep us in argument. They have invested in it. Paperclip is all about keeping us trapped in our own little ego, arguing with one another. Again, there are 4 doors to every presentment. And we all have to learn how to operate in honor now, because we've been actually operating in total dishonor through tacit agreements and complicit acceptance of the way they've set up this matrix. No more. Everything is fraud. Everything vitiates fraud. The fraud vitiates everything it touches. So everything since 1878 is done. It's null and void. Every corporate office posing as government, this is a foreign insurrection. We haven't had a vote since 1878. Even some of the truthers have proven that. You know, we have to now stand up. We don't have any authority in their playground, and they have no authority in ours. And ours is far more powerful.
So, Miki, you brought up something that that resonates a lot with stuff that we talk about here, which is, you mentioned people on the ground doing these things at school boards and town councils, city councils, things like that. And I try to remind people all the time when they get frustrated and they say nothing's happening and all these different cliches that we've gotten, that, I point to those type of things all the time. I remind them that whether it was 20 years ago or 7 years ago when the drop started or 4 years ago when COVID, there was something along the way that got each person off the bench, so to speak, to stop just looking at what's happening and actually stand up, speak up, build a website, go out, go to a school board meeting, start a patriot group, whatever it might be. And that when we talk about Q, we always talk about the famous drop that says you cannot tell the people, you must show them. And that a lot of the events that we've seen, especially over the last 4 years, that have activated these people, that, to say that people are not doing anything, to me is very disingenuous to what's going on, because there are, critical race theory, transgenderism in schools. That stuff didn't start in 2020. It started a long time ago. But why was it brought front and center? Because people saw it was actually happening. And same thing with this world, where people are getting involved with, city, town councils, school boards, etc., realizing how corrupt they are, how, the deeper hole of the fact that they're not even our real government, that it's been all these things that we've seen, and people are on the ground taking action. So what was your moment where you decided that, I can't just look at this anymore, I have to actually stand up and start doing something? In other words, if you could tell us just a little bit about how you got off the bench, so to speak, and started this entire process really to where we are today.
I think you have to get to the point where you just can't stand what you're seeing anymore, and you want to be part of the solution, not part of observing the problem. Really, it is in taking just action that we create change. So after about a year and a half of my children being masked in the public schools and treated like total slaves and cattle, I couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't stand it. And I think most parents couldn't either. And at the time, late 2022 or ish, well, early 2022, they were threatening forced, inoculations to our kids, especially in Washington and in Oregon. So the parents were highly, highly motivated. Think of it like a wave of frustration just ready to boil over. And I knew that had been building up, because I knew it was building up in me as a parent. So it was Ann LaFleur, my partner in Bonds for the Win, who called me up and explained the bonds. She explained that each of the public servants have to be licensed, bonded, and insured. Licensed meaning oath of office. Bond meaning, they have to carry surety to we the people in the event that they harm us, and a liability policy. And it was in this offensive action that we were auditing them. Hey, we were sending FOIA requests, Freedom of Information Act requests, to say, hey, give us these 3 documents. And then with those documents, we were serving. Now, Ducey, at the time, the governor of Arizona, his bond covered the whole state. So once we got a hold of that thing, we posted it online and let everyone download and let everyone serve almost organically. So it was God moving his pieces, not so much me. And then we were able to, because everyone was auditing, we were just getting these documents flying in the door. And so next thing we know, we were posting Newsom, we were posting Brown, we were posting Inslee. And we were just like, go get them. Here's the paperwork, go get them. And everyone was being creative in how they were serving these boards. These boards were running out of the office. They know what they're doing is wrong. They would turn off the lights, they'd call the police, they'd try to run, and they almost always come back 7 days later, vote 7-0, no more masks, no more porn in the library. So our action was having a direct reaction. We were putting them on defense, right? It's as if we've all been watching in shock and awe as everything we've ever been taught is, questionable now. And we're all the way back on that 1 yard line without an offensive playbook, and what does this even mean? Well, we have to become the creditors now. We are not the debtors of society, guys. We are not the debtors. We are the ones who put the money in the bank. The banksters need us. The governments need us to comply in order to even exist. So when we were taking right action, we were simply affirming to them that, hey, we'll file a claim against you if you keep going. You are supposed to be, or you proclaiming as a public servant. But they ran so hard and so fast, it was almost uncanny. Because here's Biden putting $2 billion toward ESSER funds, funding these schools to take in immigration, to take in and push this agenda, to push these clinics, to push their union workers on them, to get them all to protect the people under guise of safety. All those barriers they were setting up between the desks in the schools. I mean, are you kidding me? Biden pulls the mask mandate within 3 months of parents taking offense? What? I mean, what does that even mean? Suddenly 50 million children are liberated in the US, then it was Canada, then it was Europe, then it was Australia, all because we took offense in a collective manner? Really? Next thing you know, the private schools couldn't hold those mandates anymore. They had to drop them. Then the colleges dropped them. It was a domino. Then the airlines dropped them. Then the department stores dropped them. Guys, this is moves and counter moves. They're never going to admit that they lost. They will never admit that. So then we're like, well, we got to get to the bottom of what did we just scratch open? Well, not a single oath was legit. Not a single one. We couldn't file a claim against a single bond because not a single one of them are legit. You can give us this long, complicated policy, but if I can't file a claim against it, and you're going to sick your, risk management department on me, which is all just, again, another arm of the city trying to block us from getting our rights back, then you're not even bonded. So you're not legit. And I don't even think some of these people knew they weren't legitimate.
No, I'm sure they don't.
I think when it comes to most of the people, they don't understand the quote-unquote flow of government. They don't understand what's entailed in being a quote-unquote public official. And they lose track of the fact that these people are allegedly our servants, not serving themselves. But the problem that we have, the inherent problem that we have, is the cattle prod and getting people to go and take the action. And they can see you have gone ahead and you've taken on Maricopa and other places, but when it comes to them actually doing it, well, let Miki do it.
I think a lot of people are brave and a lot of people are fed up. And I can tell you right now, get ready for some fireworks because we are the news now. You want to make mainstream? I just made 20 million views. Go get famous. All you got to do is go serve the same speech I did. All you have to do is call out it's an illusion, guys. It's a magic trick. And it can't stay there if we call it out. If everyone sees the illusion, they won't participate in the illusion anymore. Does that make sense? It's
absolutely, it's an awareness thing. And I think, just to as I told you, I think most people watching this will be familiar with what you're talking about. But just to kind of sum it up, and correct me if I say anything wrong here, I think most people know that the Organic Act of 1871 essentially created a corporation, essentially switched our government to a corporation rather than a republic, and that everything that falls under it. And maybe some people don't know this. Mark and I were talking about this today. It's obviously the federal level, and then subsidiary of that is your state. that's a corporation. And a subsidiary of that is your county, and that's a corporation. And your town, your city, that's a corporation. I don't know if most people know this because some of us tend to go a little bit further down the rabbit hole than others. But like where I used to live in Hoboken, New Jersey, I use as an example. You go online, it's not just that Hoboken is a corporation. They have a D&B number for the city. They have a D&B number for the school board. There's a D&B number for the police department, for the sanitation. In other words, every last service of that city has been converted into a corporate construct. And that's the illusion that we're living under right now. And what you're doing is essentially calling them on this.
Right, and holding them personally liable.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't care if you work for McDonald's, if you're asked to commit genocide, who do you think is guilty?
Exactly. And so talk about this a little bit more. So I think, as you mentioned, public servants are covered by a surety bond, a liability bond. Basically, if they do something in their line of public service, that's their liability protection, in theory. But
okay, let's separate it.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
You have de facto government, which has acquired through acquisition, because they didn't have to tell you about that. They've acquired every police precinct, every jail, every court. So you're not living in a free world. You're living in a domestic terrorist foreign occupation. And Dr. Jan Helper Hayes has come and confirmed just about everything that the researchers have said. She has said Biden is working for a fake, phony, false corporation that has been dissolved. And I believe all subsidiaries thereof have been dissolved, but you still have to move them out of town. You still have to call them out for what they are, debit the debtors of society, serve them with the paperwork that puts them in debt and personal liability, which is what they're doing to us, and then form and restore your republic. Now, the forefathers gave us a pathway to do this. We just didn't know it. And they're called social compacts. So let's just discuss that really quick, because that's really where we need to really forge and fortify. Then we can turn on the fake, phony, false, corrupt. But you have the de facto, but you still have the original republics. Now, did everyone know that 1 week before JFK Sr.'s assassination, he had sent the plans to the Navy to formally restore all 50 state republics? You don't think that has some value? You don't think the deep state's after our republics? Because anytime God rolls in a kingdom of heaven, the devil's got to roll in a counterfeit, and all he can do is lure you through tacit agreement. He can't actually do anything to you without your agreement. He can pick off one by one, but if we come in together as a body sovereign, as a whole, we will win. It's inevitable. It's just we have to come together now, and we have to agree to the solution. Now, the forefathers didn't all agree on how to get to peace, but they agreed they wanted to get to peace and prosperity and freedom for all, where all needs are met for every last citizen within America. So you have on the de jure side, you still have public servants who have signed an oath to we the people. It's just no one's shining light on them. No one's covering them. No one's getting behind them. No one's commanding them. I've just interviewed a guy this morning. His name's Jin Huguenin. I was there during his sign-in. He was signed in by a justice of the peace out of necessity for the Republic of Illinois. He's holding a volunteer position until we can form a fair and safe election. But no one will join his committee or his cabinet. No one will get in there to command him. We need 3,000 strong to be, the body sovereign. Because remember, in the Republic, in the de jure, we the people are above government. We're the body sovereign. We control body politic. They're servants. But in the fake, phony de facto, they're elected officials. Well, let's just call them selected officials, because I don't have a vote for Honeywell. I don't even know if we ever had a vote. And even the voting is messed up because it's more of a democracy vote where the majority is voting and the majority rules. That's not how the forefathers set it up. Okay? They cared. They were making moral and ethical decisions. Think of it more like an HOA. You move in. If you don't show up to the meetings, you have no say.
That's right.
And as a matter of fact, in Florida right now, and no one's pointing this out, no one is following this. Somehow they got through legislator that everyone had to be audited. So there's this Form 6 that all the public officials, city, county, state, have to now be audited. they have to claim, and this is why I think this is the white hats, they have to claim any income over $1,000. And I think the white hats knew, because at first it started at 10,000, then they lowered it to 1,000 because they know that the standard bribe is around $2,000. So all these people are vacating offices all over Florida, and no one even knows about it. So you know what's happening? The people still running for the fake, phony, false, corrupt, de facto Death Star are still out gathering signatures to get on ballots that they'll probably shut down the night before.
Mm-hmm.
And in the meantime, all these offices are just sitting vacated. We could have reseated them, or we could have run them out so they never seated again, because it's a corporation. It's a Dun & Bradstreet. They don't have jurisdiction over us.
It's interesting. It's interesting you brought up that story, because we actually did cover that, believe it or not, a few weeks ago. And I was like, look at all these offices being vacated. And I think where it's important, because you said something that I think is so spot on. I agree with you. I think that when you talk about what's going on behind the scenes with the white hats having taken the head off the snake, taken out DC, and by definition, if you know how a corporation works, if you take out the holding corporation, then it would trickle down. But what you're doing and the importance of it, the reason I feel that it's such a critical message at this juncture, because, if you follow Q and you hear so many people quoting the Law of War manual, right, as being kind of the guiding doctrine for everything that's happening right now. Well, if you read the Law of War manual, and we know it's in the Q drops at reference 11.3, 11.4. Well, in those exact chapters, in section 11, it actually talks about the restoration of a civilian government. And what it does say, and I'm paraphrasing, but what it does say essentially is that the military in a reconstitution of a republic will not restore power to the civilian government unless they are confident that the civilian government can handle it, basically can carry it forward. So the stuff that, whatever is going to happen at the federal level and what we're going to see over the next few months to a year is going to happen. But I think your message right now is so critically important, because I've said this for such a long time. That famous quote of Benjamin Franklin, what type of government did you select? And he walked out and he said, a republic, if you can keep it, right? And they want to know that. And I believe that's, besides the information warfare, I think that's what Q was about. It was about this D-class and this information dissemination so we could become the news and override the media. Absolutely, that's what's happened. That's what's still happening. But a second piece of it that I think gets lost in the discussion is that they needed to train. They needed to say, how do we come up with a group of X millions of people who can take things like what you're doing and implement them at the local level, meaning we could pull the plug tomorrow. We could get rid of all this fake stuff, restore Trump, do whatever people want to see. But what can you guys do? How do we know that people like me and Mark and everyone that listens to us at their local level, how do we ensure that they're going to be ready to step in and do what they need to do? And I think that's a big piece of it, that it's exactly, they could remove all this construct, but I don't even think it's reasonable to think that the military is going to go into every city and town and school board. No, they want us to do that.
Yeah.
Or at least they want to see that we have the ability to do that. But I think it is going to fall on us, especially at these local levels, to absolutely step up and do that. And I think that's
the cattle that I brought up before.
Yeah.
I think for Trump, it all comes down to jurisdiction. He's been doing every single thing by the book, folks. If you don't learn the book, you don't know his playbook. And that's why I like Derek Johnson. I like the people coming out with real facts. We have to learn about common law. We have to learn about trust law. We have to learn about how to restore a republic. We have to learn about social compacts and PMAs and how to protect ourselves in the private. If you don't learn about the public versus the private, or you don't learn about being a creditor versus a debtor, you'll never win this war. We, the people in each of the states, these were sovereign countries. They were their own sovereign nation. Arizona was a sovereign nation. It was built on the premise that we had to protect against domestic government overreach. That's our job in each state. It is Trump's job to protect against domestic overreach. Foreign overreach. And he has. He's protected against foreign invasion. He went and got every country to capitulate. He's secured every military. He's secured all the banks. We're all going into bricks. We're all looking at the massive shift, and the money changers have shifted. The tables have twisted. But now we have to do the same. We have to do the same at the bottom. So think of us at the very bottom of the pyramid. He had to take out the top 15 for us to take out the bottom. And if we don't step up in honor and walk in sacred honor, we'll never learn our lesson. We will never be able to hold the republic. We won't value it.
This is what we've said as long as we've been doing this, that if the people don't step up and the people don't take action and the people don't do what's necessary to get out of what has become human nature, the phrase I use is going to go down like a kamikaze pilot, because the same people are going to rise back to power. And this time they know the game plan. And there won't be any changing it next time. Like Trump has said, we've got one shot at this. And we have to do it right. But people have to get involved. And I think that's the hardest thing that we face, is getting, again, that cattle prod, getting them off their asses to do what's necessary.
I mean, I have to say, my hat's off to all the mama bears and the papa bears that stood up to their school districts. I think they're primed and ready to go. I think you have armies of the light in each and every county right now that just need marching orders. Even the Masons, before they were infiltrated, they were talking about how first you got to get the people to really care, and I think we all care. Then you got to give them a ton of knowledge, and then you got to give them the solutions. So right now, even if this next year is just a year of disclosure on how you stand in honor against these crooks, it's going to be so easy. It is so easy. It's a mental shift. It's not a lot. It's just a matter of knowing who you're dealing with. So there are 4 doors to every presentment. I think we should bring this up because I'm learning so much from this. There are 2 that are honorable, 2 that are dishonorable. The most honorable way you can ever walk is in acceptance. The second would be a conditional acceptance. And this is how Trump has gotten out of 72 of those cases. Even Dr. Jan Helper Hayes said he got out of all those court hearings because of standing. They didn't have standing. What that means is they didn't have jurisdiction over him, so he could say easily, sure, I'll contract with you if you can prove you have jurisdiction over me, or you can prove there's a victim, and they can't. Therefore, he said, that case is dropped. That's conditional acceptance. That's great if you want to fend for yourself, but that doesn't fend for your village. So we're going to teach acceptance because I'm operating in acceptance. I know who they are, and I know who I am. Therefore, I can serve papers with authority. Now, the more dishonorable first reaction in the 4th door of presentment is argument. And the most dishonorable is ignorance or ignore, to ignore. Now, we've been ignoring for long enough. We've all signed tacit agreements with our birth certificates. We did it with the marriage certificate. We did it with, the license, all of it. And we now know better. Okay, now we could all work in conditional acceptance and try to go and rescind all those contracts. But that's, again, arguing with an enemy. A lot of people went to become state nationals, which I appreciate that movement. I understand people want to get out of slavery. I appreciate that. However, when they got you into the initial agreements, those were tacit. Those were non-contractual because there wasn't informed consent. But if you go and you change your status, what are you using? Consent. Now you're renegotiating with the tyrant. And now they've got you in their system. And now they've profiled 10 million people. Now, I'm not saying they didn't have the right intention. I'm just saying that we're still operating in somewhat of a misunderstanding of who we're actually dealing with. Does that make sense? And it only is through trial and tribulation that we find our way because it's all been hidden from us. So there's any effort is a good effort. But when we walk in acceptance, pure acceptance, and we go and we command them to tell us who they are, and that's precisely what we're doing in Maricopa County. The first notice was to each of the 9 people to say, you're personally liable. I don't care who you work for. I don't care who's paying you. You don't have an oath of office. You don't have a bond. You're operating in voter fraud, and you're misrepresenting yourself to the people. So you're masquerading as government.
Okay? Real quick, Miki, I'm sorry to not interrupt you. Just so everyone, because everyone will have seen. We saw the video already. I know a lot of people have seen your interviews, but for the people that haven't, just walk through the entire the process. So starting from the actual information that you got, that you FOIA'd, what you found and how that led you into what you did in Maricopa County. Just kind of lay it out that way for people. I think that in case anybody hasn't fully seen one of your interviews before, it'll help them understand exactly what you did there, what they saw in all these different viral videos that have been going around.
Sure. Well, first, let me clear the record. I'll tell you how it went down that day, and then I'll tell you about the paperwork we're serving.
Okay.
So I went in with a power-packed speech. I was waiting. I was going to give my speech, and then they left the boardroom because one of the other gals was basically, okay, let me start over. When we got in the boardroom, we were all shuffling papers because we were all signing this letter of intent. There are police going up to the board, they're letting them know, you guys might get served today. I don't know how that all went down. All I know is that a couple people before me were citing Marbury versus Madison. They decided to adjourn the meeting way before it was scheduled to be over. There were 20 speakers, and they cut me off. So they adjourned. As they were adjourning, we were yelling, "You're being served. We're going to serve you." And at that time, I thought it was within my jurisdiction to take over the board meeting because they had just vacated their offices, and I was going to go ahead and vote in a new set of volunteers. However, I look back on that, and that's not really my jurisdiction. It's their foreign corporation. I don't have any say in Honeywell. I couldn't go, even though they call it a public building, it's not.
It's not. It's a corporate building.
Not. Yeah. Right. And you're not speaking in your right to speak within, on some public square. You're in their private corporation or the private capacity. They're lying to you about who they are, and you're lying to you about who you are. It's a trap. So then I gave a report to the people holding cell phones on what we were going to serve that day. Then I went and I took the mic again. It was still live. They weren't recording in Maricopa County. I gave my speech because it mattered to me to get it out. I had come that day to give my speech. I gave it, and I don't care if just the internet sees it. Then we went across the street and served them on the 10th floor. And I have proof of service because we recorded it. And they have no proof that we didn't serve it. Did they send anyone out to actually receive it? No. But any notice is these people aren't above the law, and they're not above service. So when you serve it to their front desk and you have video of it, you have evidence of service. They don't have evidence of non-service. Okay, so I just want everyone to be clear. When I texted Ann Vandersteel, she knew my speech going in. I texted her 2 hours later. I said, "Oh my gosh, we got the whole board to run out." She assumed it was because of my speech. She tweeted that out. We redacted that statement within 11 hours, but it had already gone nuclear. There are already 4.5 million views. So I just want everyone to know that we need the middle to understand these concepts now. We've got to get through to the Mike Lindells and the Tuckers and, the Laura Logans. We need to get more exposure on some of this stuff now because it's time to know that, yeah, it's been 4 years of researching election fraud, but we never really had a vote in their foreign corporation. So it's kind of time to stop in that state of argument. Remember that lower door and or that state of ignorance? It's time to step up and have firm, thorough knowledge of how they usurped us so that we can use the same tactics against them.
Now, just as a question that a lot of the viewers might have, and quite frankly, I've got also, we understand the construct of it being a foreign corporation, any of these elected officials. Other than federal buildings in D.C., because D.C. is foreign territory, aren't any of these halls where local officials have their meetings, or state senate chambers, state assembly chambers, et cetera, technically our buildings and not the corporation's home. The people may be part of the corporation, they may be officers of the corporation, but these structures themselves, if they choose to vacate them, they choose to vacate their hall, so to speak.
It isn't actually like that. And I think we're walking in dishonor by storming into their buildings, assuming it's our taxpayer dollars. I think all of our taxpayer dollars has actually been siphoned straight to the Queen. I think it's actually their crime syndicate dollars that are paying for those buildings. And I think if you really looked under the hood, they're a foreign corporation. So it is their bylaws that they're following. And it's all their stuff made up, and they can make it up until they're blue in the face. And if we comply, then they're real. It's called prima facie. They make rules that only apply to them. They can move the goalposts whenever they feel like it. They can take Trump off the ballot. They can do whatever that they want. And I think the White Hats are showing us just how corrupt the courts are. If you don't speak their language, they're gonna traffic you. And so what we were doing is we had done the oaths of office. We pulled the oaths of office. I can show you all the highlighted mistakes and mishaps. They're all in all caps. They've signed an oath to an all caps County of Maricopa. And they don't serve we the people. It's an illusion of protection and safety while they steal all of our land, our children, and our estates. They've created an overlay of zip codes so they can steal or claim your land, but you can't do that because land can only be passed from one sovereign to a next. So a foreign corporation can't take your land, but they can claim it and they'll bully you off of it if you don't know better. And so we, the people, have to know better. We have to see how these crooks are stealing from us. We have to now claim our land. We have to learn how to operate in the private. We have to hold our own private trust so that we can pass our life works down to our heirs. Otherwise, we're just leaving our world with no one to follow, and the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer because we don't know how to stand in honor. We don't know how to hold our estate. And the way the Pope looks at it is like, well, no one else claimed you.
Yep.
So when are we going to grow up? When are we going to grow up? So what I'm suggesting, well, let me finish what we serve. We serve them a notice. So when you put personal liability, because I'd say 90% of the devil's minions don't even know they work for the devil. I mean, that it really is not a war between good and evil. It's more a war between the awake and the sleep. And we were all asleep at one point. So sometimes the best way to do it is to hard pill. Give them the documentaries, give them the choice to make the right decision. Most police officers did not know they were signing an oath of office to a foreign corporation that had been in it's an insurgency. They thought they were signing an oath of office to uphold the peace. So they would be more than happy to come and sign into the de jure, because that's what they wanted to do in the first place. So I think we, the people, can make that shift simply by just notifying the people. I don't think we even need to take any lawfare. We just need to notify the people. And that's the worst nightmare to our enemy. It's the biggest Achilles heel, is if their employees know they're personally liable. However, they're not personally liable until we serve them. I mean, we had a little trial by peers among kids the other day, and we said, you've got a nurse on the stand. She accidentally killed 100 people. Her medical board said it was safe. Her doctors said it was safe. Google said it was safe. The news said it was safe. We informed her of the actual dangers of the vaccine, and now she's terrified. She's bawling on the stand. She feels horrible. What do you guys think? Is she guilty or not guilty? And they all said not guilty. She was misled. Forgive her, Lord, for she was misled. I said, well, so let's say we give her a notice and she keeps doing it. Then is she guilty? Absolutely.
So that brings up a good question, which is, and I'm looking at the statement, your statement here that, we read in the beginning of the show before we started. And, you're serving them a notice of liability and opportunity to cure on, the fact that they didn't sign, well, their oath is signed to the corporate construct of the state of Arizona, or the county of Maricopa in this case. The lack of the surety bond, and then obviously a notice of liability. I see that you did basically for $1.75 million per claim, 12 signatures, each personally liable for $21 million. And then obviously said if you don't resign in 3 days, you'll be presented with a writ quo warranto and a waiver of tort. So where does that process end? Because obviously I think we can expect that in many cases as this happens, the first time you do it, they're just going to probably
act in ignorance.
Act in ignorance, exactly. So what follows that?
That's good because you're catching them in the act. So not only did I tell them they're all personally liable, I gave them a jump drive with a 5,000-page document with all of the acts against humanity, including the border, the human trafficking, the vaccine injury, etc. And I commanded them, if you're my public servant, you will put out a public broadcast immediately. They didn't do that, right? Now, as a body sovereign, commanding body politic, that's what we're supposed to do. They didn't do that. So now they're in the middle of a cover-up. And if we don't put them on record, they'll never know that they're in the middle of a cover-up, right? So, yeah, 3-step process. First, you put them on notice, and it's a hard yellow card. It's giving them an opportunity to leave. Because if I were them, I wouldn't want to be picked up by military helicopters. I wouldn't. I'm sorry, but the people, may not have their common law court set up, but the military has their tribunal set up. Okay,
Well, and that's the important part. You're putting them on notice with the military, correct?
Yeah, that's so step one is you put them on notice, give an opportunity, because we want them to take the right action. If they don't, then you serve the writ of quo warranto, which is an even harder push. It's like a father saying, now show me your credentials. Give me that oath of office, give me that bond now, or else in 30 days, just like a ticket, just like a police officer would give you a ticket. Otherwise, in 30 days, you are deemed guilty out of inaction. So your inaction proves your guilt. We'll accept your guilty plea. So step one, serve them the letter of notice of liability, opportunity to cure. Step two, the writ of quo warranto with the waiver of tort puts them on a timeline. You got to do this within 30 days, or else we're going to accept your default judgment of guilt, and we'll go ahead and notify the military, because now you've just admitted who you are through tacit consent.
Now, if you take that, what you were just talking about with the nurse, okay? This all started with COVID back in 2020. If you look at the nurse, you look at the doctors, you look at the pharmacists, you look at the mainstream media, was push the agenda. As we've stated a million and one times in a bunch of our broadcasts, the information is out there. You've been made aware of the information. You failed to research that information. And if you're the media, to put the truth out there. If you're the doctors, not to push forward the agenda with the jab, or the nurses, or the pharmacists. Where does the liability or the excuse of, well, I was misled? Because when you look at the Nuremberg trials, doesn't hold fact. So where is that line drawn? Where do you cut the slack? And where do you say, no, I'm sorry, it just doesn't hold water anymore?
I mean, people are dying. I mean, we're living in a modern day war for your mind, where the vaccines are the bullets. Now, if you could hear the bullets, I think you'd feel more urgent about it. And I'm actually asking all the men to get their ass off the couch. Get your ass off the couch. There's a problem. People are dying. Your children, they're poisoning everyone's children with the water, the food, and the air. They are poisoning every child the second they're born with these vaccines. They're threatening moving that mRNA into the standard flu, vax, and God knows what other vaccines. We are not in control of what's in those things. And yet the men are sitting around waiting for a savior.
But that's become the American way. Everybody sits down and they wait, like I said before. Miki will do it. Miki's out there running around, she'll take care of it. Or
Right.
This one will take care of it. How do we go about
I
using
love
that
question.
cattle prod?
Let's talk about how the forefathers taught us how to do it. Now, that beautiful document you have in the background there had so much meaning to them, because they first had to declare and decree who they were going to protect. First, you want to declare and decree over your spirit. Then you want to declare and decree over your body, because from this day forth, you're making your own choices. You're no longer just being, corralled. Then you're going to declare and decree over your own family. And then you need to choose who you're going to protect within your neighborhood. Is it going to be your HOA? Is it going to be a school district? Is it going to be your city? Is it going to be your county? Who do you want to declare and decree over? You can't just call yourself a king and not act like a king. A king cares about his kingdom, period. He cares about the safety of his people, and it doesn't take many. It doesn't take many of us. All we need is a council of 12 per county. That's it. That's it. To form your social compact. So the way that the forefathers did it, and by the way, we were talking about the de jure. I want to spit this out really quick. In the de jure, meaning the correct republic, we had to have public servants in there to uphold the Constitution. If you don't have public servants in there, you don't have a Constitution, guys. We could be reading it all day long, but remember, when they came in and usurped us in 1871 and came back 7 years later as corporations, they rewrote their Constitution as their corporate bylaws. So you got two constitutions. You always have to know which one you're referring to. And the one that's sitting idle is because we don't have servants in place. There's nothing it's called a trust indenture. There's nothing for them to uphold. So we can argue all day till the cows come home about our Constitution, but until you have people in place to uphold it, you have no enforcers of it. So a social compact is basically any group of two or more. So let's just say, let's talk about my HOA. Let's say I realized the HOA is actually putting liens on our properties here. They're not protecting us. The HOA we thought was here to uphold, you know what I mean, the protection of our community. We're gated, da 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 da. I would form a group of, let's say, 10 to 20 people, and I would set an intention. We'd set a social compact, aka PMA, and we'd say, we're going to operate in the private. The intention is to declare and decree over everyone in the neighborhood. We're going to try to get them out of their loans. We're going to try to get them their land patent. We're going to try to run these idiots out of town that are putting, liens on our property illegally. We're going to make sure that the data from our gate is not being sold upstream to the FBI. And guess what? We're going to back up and we're going to help everybody within this community if they do get targeted by these fake, phony, false courts or CPS or whatever. Now, that's one heck of a benefit. So long as you can get a group of 10 or 30 or even grow that group, because once you take out the fake, phony, false employees down at your HOA building and you serve them with letters of intent and they vacate their office, now you can send out flyers to every single person in your community. Now you have the database, you have access, you've reclaimed your community, you've retaken your territory. And yeah, you're going to use a bit of lawfare because they're operating in, dishonor. But at the same time, what you're really going to do is help fortify. Okay? Now you can do that at the city level. You could fortify over a school district. You can fortify over a county. And that's what I've decided to do. I'm going to fortify over the county. We're going to create a social compact, aka a preamble with a PMA, where anyone can join us. Now, if we can get 300 people in there, you see how much more stronger we are, even if just the first intention is to serve the crooks a notice. And we're going to serve them a yellow card. And we're probably going to give them a little more time, because they haven't been put in alignment yet. We're going to keep serving, and we're going to see what happens if we do it in mass. Because right now, what I'm watching is a bunch of people going against the system with a stick, trying to break the whole system. You can't do it alone. We cannot do it alone. We have to fortify. We have to form these compacts. That's what the forefathers taught us. It's in every single organic constitution to form these social compacts.
And real quick, I love the fact, again, for people that are maybe watch this and saying to themselves, but I thought they said the military, and that doesn't change anything, because what I love about what you're doing is you're reporting these people to the military. So think about it, guys. That if we're going back to Q World and we're like, well, they say the military is the only way. Exactly, connect the dots, right? Like I said, we know look, we all see the helicopters, we see the convoys, we see the masks, we all see the stuff, the charade that's going on around us. But what better way to demonstrate to the military that we are getting ready to take action at our local levels than by doing exactly what you're doing, right? So even if they don't vacate the office, but who are you putting on notice that you serve them and that they didn't comply? You're putting the military on notice. You see how this all connects? So to me, what better way to show them that we're ready than by what you're doing?
We have to connect the dots. I think what we have to do is get a third of the counties in Arizona. We actually have only 15 counties in Arizona, so we only need to get 10. And then we can call in the military, because then we can bring up our republic. So it isn't until we get the consent of the governed and the consent of the counties that we can truly bring up our republic. And then we're sovereign as a nation in Arizona. Okay? But I think it needs to happen to a third of the republics throughout the U.S. to get the full national sovereignty back. Now, again, we only formed a union to protect against foreign invasion. So we're not really, it's not that the military isn't here already protecting us. And I think the Q followers can move with even more precision, because they know we're living in a safer time than we've ever lived in. We know what they've cleaned up. We know we haven't dropped a bomb since Obama on any innocent country. We knew Ukraine was a stronghold for the Khazarian mafia. We knew that we were going to save Israel for last, and that's Mossad. We're seeing world peace. Now we just have to take right action and know we're safe in doing it. And I do know people that have stepped up out of necessity to hold position as governor that have been approached by the military and said, look, the true state of it is right now the police are still occupied. We can't have guns turning on each other. The police are still under foreign occupation. They're armed. We don't have all the FBI. They have to see their own system crumble, and it has to be the people rising up to crumble it. Because again, it's a shift in money changers. It's a shift in consciousness. When we shift into becoming a creditor, we're no longer accepting a debt slave society. We live in a slave world. We are all slaves. And it's just going to continue to perpetuate if we continue to allow them to operate as corporations.
Yeah, I think it's something, to throw in here again for the people that might not be as familiar with it without going too far down the rabbit hole. But I know you've spoken about this on a number of the interviews I've watched. Is I don't know if everyone quite realizes that every action that these local police, which really they're not actual law enforcement, they're policy enforcement. Technically, it's no different. I don't mean any disrespect. I support the police, but legally, it's no different than when you go to the mall, right? The security people work for the corporation. They don't work. Your sheriff is your real law enforcement. But speak about this a little bit. Every little thing that the police do, they write you a ticket, they bring you into court. It's all money moving. Every one of those is another bond that's being opened against your corporate straw man and being resold. So it's everything that's being done is just furthering the system. And that's why I agree with you that we're seeing this giant exposure of all the judges. Because why are all the judges corrupt? Because they're beholden to the corporation, the corporate construct that is doing all these different lawfare tactics, everything from standing in the street and writing you a ticket for your registration. That's just opening a bond. It's all money movement.
Right, and you can prove it by going to treasurydirect.gov. You can look up just about any court case and see the bonds that they're opening with every single action they take inside these courts. These judges cannot prove that they have an oath of office, they can't prove they've got a surety bond, and they can't prove they don't have a financial interest in your case. And after Nixon changed it, unfortunately, again with a gun to his head. I think he was one of us. But yeah. He ended up changing it from innocent till proven guilty to guilty till proven innocent. And unfortunately now the prosecuting attorney is covering both sides of the bench. Your defense attorney can only plea bargain. You've already been declared guilty because they're so busy trading you as money changers under the table, and they've already hired a brokerage company to create a trust in your name, which you didn't authorize. They're managing that trust that you're actually the executor of, and you could claim it, by the way. There's ways to claim it. But they've created 3 bonds in that trust. So the police officers are unknowingly holding a gun to our head to force us into slavery. They didn't know that, and I feel for them. But we are taking it. What people have to understand is we have the higher ground. They're operating in maritime. It's all based on deception. And it's all the Justinian deception. So people should go research that, make your TikTok videos. There's this guy named Romley Stewart. He does a great job of explaining the stuff. Just Justinian deception on YouTube. And if you break up his stuff and you break up his videos, he'll teach you how they've done this to us through wordplay. They're using dog Latin to con us because my all caps name is my corporation. A corporation cannot run a red light. They're charging the all caps name. So when a police officer pulls you over and he asks for your license, he's asking you to claim the legal fiction that they've already placed you in. Think of like a crate. That's your trafficking container, and you're the body inside the crate, but they're charging the crate. I'm not charging you the body. So you could go in any court of record and say, what rules, and regulations apply to me as a living woman within this court? And that's a trick question because not a single one of them do.
Nope.
And if you went into McDonald's and you asked, hey, what rules apply to me if I'm not an employee here? Not a single one of them do because you're not an employee there. You're not contracting with them. Now, right. the government and the courts are very much like a tractor field, like a Death Star. There's no point in trying to infiltrate them. You'd be signing an oath to a foreign corporation, joining the enemy. It's just like becoming a redcoat.
Now, could you clarify for the people, when you say that none of these people have taken an oath of office, and yet anytime they get elected to an office, people can either attend or see on TV these people, I solemnly swear, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What exactly do you mean by none of them have taken an oath of office?
Well, they've signed an oath to a foreign corporation, and we know that now because we understand their dog Latin. Anything in a box, kick it out. Doesn't even belong in any document. It's called a docket. Anything that's all caps, highlight it in all black, even if it's the notary, even if it's the seal. If it says state of Arizona in the seal, null and void. Corporation. Not. A lot of times it's the corporation signing for it. So the all caps name of the judge is on the contract. It's the all caps name. How can a corporation sign an oath to we the people?
Right.
They can't. They're not working for the republic.
Only under contract law. That can't be done under true law, because you can't contract a person to a corporation. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
And that's the technicality, right? So they've actually, yes, the people say, no, look, I got it right here. They did sign an oath. They signed a piece of paper, but the piece of paper, the oath is to the corporation with a Dun and Bradstreet number that's known as the County of Maricopa, not Maricopa County. So their oath is to the corporation. The corporation is part of the probably defunct USA Inc., which is a foreign corporation.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
These guys are sitting ducks. They're being asked to commit fraud, treason, and to masquerade as government. These are very well pedigreed puppets. They're not working for us. And so people also have to learn now there's 4 forms of government. We have never been taught really truly how to hold a republic or what a republic is. So 2 are honorable, lead you to utopian. 2 are dishonorable, lead you to dystopian society. The most honorable would be that we're all self-governed, that all of our needs are met. No one goes hungry, no one goes thirsty worldwide. We're all self-governed, and when you teach a man to self-govern, he can govern himself. You don't need a big government. The next down would be a republic, because in a republic, we the people stand over the body politic. They're our employees. If they're not doing their job, you just fire them, you bring in a new employee. It's that simple. It's like having an administrative team working for you, we the people. We are the body sovereign. Think about that, guys. Sovereignty means sovereignty. What does a body sovereign mean? It means collectively we agree to be sovereign. Okay, so I think that's the perfect name that the forefathers laid out. Body sovereign over body politic. The first step into dystopia would be a democracy. Because in a democracy, it's the way we've been taught. We've actually never been taught how to live in a republic. In a democracy, you have a dictatorship and you have a mob rule or a majority vote. Well, in a majority vote, who's thinking of the little guy? I mean, really, who's thinking of the veterans? Who's thinking of the homeless? Who's thinking of the minority who has children? We cannot vote like that anymore.
Yeah, it's the mob plus one.
Yeah, it leads to a disparity of wealth between the rich and the poor. Then you slip into any ism, Marxism, communism, socialism. We are in capitalism because it's a corporatocracy running our whole country. They've acquired every 3rd-letter agency, every technocracy, every police precinct, jail, court, etc. It's a total, complete capitalism, and one could even say we've slipped even deeper into a one world order because the Queen owned us all. She had all of our debt papers on our soul, our little SOLE, printed on a piece of paper, and under the Vatican, they owned us all because they were trading us all on the dark markets. They opened those bonds in our name. We have a backpack. Think of having a backpack on your back. That's the Sesta KV. That's what they're after. You don't have access to it because they're harnessing your energy, your potential, and then they're drawing from it. That's why they're throwing the homeless in jail. Even the homeless are billionaires, and they don't know it, right? So we can't have this continue. We have to rebel against this system somehow, some way, worldwide, in order to block it from ever happening again. So we have to stay in honor. So the republic is more about voting with, you'll have a representative for each of the major groups within whatever vote it may be. So if it's a vote that's, we don't want to fund schools anymore, right? Then you're going to have parents vote separately from the rest of the community so that you can send representatives and make a moral and ethical decision based on what's best for community, not what's best for the rich. And no more lobbying. All that has to go. All of us have to start auditing our servants.
We have to learn to be responsible for the freedoms that we have.
Mm-hmm.
You brought up the entire state national thing. I'm glad you did because I've studied that pretty extensively, and I agree with you. Like, listen, I encourage people to do their research, do whatever resonates best with them. I think when people are sending in their AOR, their affidavit to the Secretary of State to disconnect, become a state national, if you want to go through that process, that's fine. To me, anything that's people asserting themselves is good for our cause. But the natural question I always had was what you're addressing here, which is okay. It's a place like here, like in New York. Like, okay, good luck with any of this stuff right now. If I become a state national and I'm going into a meeting like you did, I'm standing there talking to 7 or 8 or 10 or 12 people. That even though I'm right, I'm one person and they have no idea what I'm talking about. Same thing in a court of law. So, not to say you can't have success, you can. We know a lot of people do. But to me, it was always like, well, what's the path of, I don't want to say path of least resistance. It's all hard, but what is going to be the path of least resistance for the movement would be before you go in there by yourself and trying to tell them that you're a state national and screw what you guys are doing. We are better off doing exactly what you're saying, which is put them on notice first with backing as a group.
Yeah,
to me, that approach makes so much more sense than the other way. Not to knock the other way, because like I said, anything that people are doing is good. But I'm a big proponent of where can you get the most bang for your buck in anything in life. And to me, this makes a lot more sense because you have to put the people on notice that whether or not we know how corrupt these people are, the most, to me, and I come from an area, I used to live in, like I said, in Jersey, probably the most corrupt county, well, other than Maricopa, in the nation. And even as corrupt as they are, I guarantee you most of them don't know any of this stuff yet. They have to be put on notice. Yeah, they're corrupt on their own right, but they don't know this rabbit hole. And it's going to be incumbent on us, I think, to get together. And you said you don't need massive groups of people to do this. But you got to put them on notice first.
Our school board, it was only 10 parents that stood up that liberated 25,000 children, 50,000 parents. That's 75,000 people being affected by one notice. One notice. And it's actually kind of fun. It's kind of fun standing up to them and putting them on notice. I'm just saying, it's liberating.
Absolutely. In this world where we've been, even if you just look at the last 4 years of the insanity that's been going on, and I think what bothers most people the most in the truth movement, the Q movement, whatever you want to call it, is that notion of these days that keep going by where people are waiting for justice. Like, if you're waiting for justice, I can't imagine anything other than watching tribunals. Perhaps I can't imagine anything more satisfying than doing what you did. I absolutely. Who wouldn't get? Which one of us who's awake would not get satisfaction out of doing something like that?
Right, and we did post our documents online, so people can go to thepeoplesoperationrestoration.com. They can go to Take Action and check out what we serve Maricopa County. I do not recommend anyone just print these forms and serve them, okay? You have to understand them fully. We no longer want to live in a matrix where we're signing agreements we don't fully understand. Why we're doing it, what we're doing it for. It has to be a cohesive action. And this is why we're forming our social compact to get even more fortified so that we can go serve them among juries of 4 juries of 12. There's power in 12. You know what I mean? If we can get 4 to 8 or possibly even 12 juries of 12, then they can no longer lie about who they are. And they can't lie to themselves about it. Do you see how that just dissolves the illusion? Because we're calling them out. Truth is light. And we can't call ourselves kings if we're not kings and queens if we're not going to declare and decree over our kingdom. We cannot call ourselves Christ consciousness until we act as he did. He turned the tables on the money changers by acting in acceptance. He walked into those courts and they said, who are you? Because they want to get you in their jurisdiction. All you got to do is respond to your last name and they caught you. Right? So he didn't answer. He answered with questions. He said, well, I accept who I am and I accept who you are. Because he knew they were money changers and he knew they were trading doves, aka children. Then he asked for his appearance bond, and you can do this today. He said, I'm here to request my appearance bond in order to settle the matter in the public debt and the public record. And sure enough, the judge has to give you the bond. He has to give it to the bailiff. Bailiff has to give it to you. You can rescind in all caps from the bottom left to the top right by writing your all caps name and then rescind and then the date. And then you can take pictures of it front, back. In fact, bring a notary with you. Because a notary has higher ranking than that magistrate sitting behind that administrative desk. He's just a banker. He's got a financial interest in trading you. He is not legitimate. He's there to con you. If you have a notary there, he can't stop you from taking photos of important documents. You send it back to the bailiff, you give it back to the judge, and now you've got record. You've got proof. So you can go tell the village what they were doing. Up until then, we haven't had proof. A conditional acceptance gets you out. But acceptance, he's operating in acceptance and equity. And when we start operating in acceptance and equity, meaning we're building up debt on them. Does that make sense? $21 million. I mean, just the 9 people I served, it comes to $15.57 million for me if they go into default judgment. Now, that might not have value today, but if I can serve that to the new Treasury, which we are all seeing get cleaned up, we know Trump moved the Federal Reserve into the Treasury on 3/15, which we're coming up on a delta, 3/15/2020. He did so much in that date. 3/15 is the date they lit seniors' eternal flame. You have more than you know, 3/15. The truth will set you free, 3/15. It's the first promise of the coming Redeemer is Genesis 3/15. They moved the football from Cheyenne on 3/15. This is a big deal. This is a big number. This is the year of Esther. Every single solar eclipse this year lines up with the year of Esther. I'd like to see these people in their own FEMA camps, but they're not going to end up there if we don't all line up, and if we don't get into formation and come into agreement with what needs to be done next. I think that the White Hats cannot wait for us to step into our power.
I agree. Talk a little bit about, because the natural question that we're going to get, people are going to have is, okay, but now what? You do this, you serve them, you notify the military, then what? And I've seen you on some of their interviews talking about some success stories that you've seen. So help us put people a little bit of rubber to the road and understanding that this isn't just all talk, that there have been success stories already.
Yeah, I'll tell you a quick story about Kevin. He's total badass from Missouri, okay? Knows his stuff. He's worked in the financial arena. He knows full well that every single thing is a tax matter. So what he did was he was in a hospital. 4 cops slammed him to the ground because he wouldn't wear one of those face masks, right? They have no proof that face masks cause harm, nor do they help. So what he did, they stole his wallet, all this stuff. So what he did was they pulled him into the courts because he wouldn't comply. They created a case file against him, and he did an acceptance, a conditional acceptance of their offer to contract, and then he did a counter-presentment. And that counter-presentment, he put them in debt. So now there's 80, because they didn't reply, and that all went into default, and they actually got sneaky. In his counter-presentment, it was 80 million, okay? Because it's like 15 million per cop that drive him to the ground. He has all the evidence of. So he's using negative avertment statement in his counter-presentment. They present a maritime presentment to him. He responds with a common law presentment. He told them there is no evidence to prove that you have any jurisdiction over me. There's no evidence to prove you didn't just slam me to the ground. There's no evidence to prove you didn't use force or extortion to try to force me to wear a mask. There's no evidence to prove masks help, nor that they cause any kind of spread of any disease. He put them in bankruptcy. And then they were so sneaky, they tried to create another case with a middle initial, separate case file. Because they didn't get him the first time, they tried to get him the second time. Because all they care about is drawing money from his trust. But you cannot hold the body as surety for a debt that the body does not owe. So he stood on his ground. He gave him another counter-presentment. So now he had him in 2 counter-presentments of $80 million. So it was like $160 million that he had them on the line for. They filed bankruptcy. All the judges got removed. He had filed it also with TIGTA, the new Treasury Inspector General's office. They suddenly went missing. All the judges went missing, the bailiff, even the brokerage company that had opened the trusts in the names, which he'd researched and he'd reported up to TIGTA, and he'd reported them to other military forces that I'm including in my documents as well. Next thing you know, the whole court is vacant. Vacant for a solid month. Now, you want to know what these pirates did?
Tried to sneak back in?
They don't try. They just roll in another foreign corporation, same building, side door, new address. Because they're making $50 million a day. You don't think they're going to keep rolling in their... That's what a pirate does. They just redock. Mm-hmm. You don't win in the system, guys. There's no winning here. If we don't come into a republic, we will never, ever, ever win. However, that's not the only court I saw that happen in. There were about 8. And only the people that are really, really watching and learning, and they don't let you in these groups unless you're highly respectful to them. You know, I mean, these guys are working their butts off. They're taking a risk. They're risking their lives. But we're all risking our lives if we keep it the way it is. They're poisoning all of our children, every one of us. So we can't be sitting around watching and learning anymore. I think we now have to either do a year of disclosure of common law, how it is to stand up a republic, what it means to hold these these private PMAs operating in the private where the government can't touch us, to protect against this foreign insurgency. And if we create these refugees, these strongholds, these safe havens for the people, let's just talk Maricopa County. We have 4.5 million people. There's only 9 people in this pirate ship acting as your controllers. 9 people and 20 robocops. You don't think we can serve that many people? Keep serving them while we go and start reclaiming our land, because all wars are won by land. It's all our land, guys. It's all our land. I'm sitting on the land patent for all of Maricopa County. I have the whole land patent. We can help everyone get their land back. It's not rocket science. It's just us no longer allowing them to claim thy property.
So, just to be clear, you've seen this happen in 8 courts, basically, where the people have disappeared. I mean, logic would tell you, and that's what I try to remind people. You know, guys, these hundreds of helicopters and military things that are flying around the country, it's for a reason. It's for a reason, and there's your answer. You know, you've seen things like that, and you said with 8 different courts, and you're not the first person I've spoken to in this regard. Yes, but you're not the first person I've spoken with who has been doing things at the local level and has seen people disappear for a while, step away, you know, and that's, again, to me, goes perfectly with what we're talking about, which is it's educating us, it's learning, it's standing up, and that to me is really, I think, the last piece in this giant puzzle that we're all trying to figure out with the military is, you know, how do they know that, going back to what I said about the Law of War Manual, how do we demonstrate to them that we are ready to take back, occupy, and run a civilian government that's not going to fall back into a system like this because we're not educated enough to know what we're doing?
Well, the military also are never going to show their cards. Trump said, I will never show my cards. His strategy from day one is to take out the black pieces and put them back on the board as if they're still working. Right. They are all about maintaining the same illusion on the other side. You know what I'm saying? And the dark hats, they don't know who's made a deal. They don't know from any given time who's going to rat them out. They've all got to be fearful. Yep. We just have to do that last intimidation factor, I think, and it really is our service to the military. We are, I don't like the term militia, we are the peace officers for the republic. If we want our republics back, we have to do the serving so that these police force, these ex-FBI, whatever, are no longer armed and dangerous to even the military. Would you want to be in the military force and go just barging into homes, knowing full well these people are going to go out swinging, knowing full well how corrupt these judges are? These judges know what they're guilty of. And most of them have been blackmailed, etc., and would prefer to make a deal. So when we, the people, give them the yellow card and we give them an opportunity to cure, they can walk away, just like all the rest of the resignations right after Trump did it. Trump showed us how to put people in check. He went out, he dropped all that paperwork, and he said, you guys are done. You work for me now. And then we had a resignation trail to the moon and back, even in Saudi Arabia, right after he left there. So we're doing the same thing. We're going to force them to resign. And we, the people, we massively outnumber the enemy in this case, massively. And I think all the police would prefer to work for the de jure. We just have to set up that structure again. We have to reestablish our de jure to give everyone a safe landing. And the de jure police precincts are not difficult to set up. We just need 40 in there to get federal funding. That's it. Now
Yeah.
you have police that are no longer going and taking children from homes. They're no longer going and falsely foreclosing on people. They're protecting us against the border. They're protecting us against this foreign insurgency. We need those cops. We need them all. We need everyone to be able to make informed choices now. And we have to remember mercy, because in the common law, we have much higher jurisdiction. We're going to have to teach forgiveness. Really, when people truly learn this stuff, we've got to teach forgiveness, because it's not until you put them on notice. And I actually think we should take responsibility, because we're half the equation.
But again, like you stated, you can show them for the cowards that they are and watch them run out of the room and resign.
Mhm.
How do you keep the pirates from coming back in the door?
We would prefer all those buildings vacated for good, because I have seen very strong people who understand law better than anyone, who have run people out, and then they just replace them with someone even more evil. So we do have to all see with eyes to see now how they did it. This isn't their first rodeo. They did the same thing in Israel. They did the same thing in London. They did the same thing in the Vatican. They did all of it. They've done it all in Rome. They've done it all. We're just one example of how they've usurped any republic, any freedom movement. Does that make sense? With foreign corporation, foreign occupancy. And it's all about luring us into a cage. But we don't need to be in that cage anymore. All we have to do is say, I no longer contract with that. I see who you are, just like Jesus did. I know who I am. I'm going to serve you for the crimes you've committed. And I'm going to go over here and restore and protect and defend. And that's what we do in these compacts. That's how we teach the people how to walk in honor. We teach them to no longer operate in argument and to operate in ignorance, right? And so we're no longer going to, and I do think they're all dissolved. I do think that many of their coffer accounts have been cut off. I've actually just seen, even recently, like there was billions of dollars pulled from these corporations, these coffer accounts. I actually have also heard that they've cut the courts off from our Sesta KV trusts.
I believe that.
So we can operate now with authority and confidence and bravery, because the military has cleared the way. But again, they can only do what they can do within their jurisdiction. Remember, Trump kept saying, well, Antifa, no one's calling me in. No governor's calling me in. Well, that's because no governor was ceding the republic. He didn't actually have jurisdiction. And they were still sending white unmarked vehicles then.
That's right. Absolutely right. So talk a little bit more about your mission now, right? Because you set up the People's Operation Restoration. You've obviously, we want people like platforms like this. We want to bring as much awareness to what you're doing. But the next question people are going to have is, okay, how can I learn more about this? What can I do? What are the resources? What are the steps? What are you and your organization going to be doing going forward to help bring more awareness and educate people on this process?
Well, what we have to do is operate as good stewards. So, we're going to form this PMA in Maricopa, and we're going to hopefully set the tone for other counties to follow. First, we have to fortify and create that safety. So we're going to be peacefully assembling this Wednesday night. We're going to go down and we're going to serve them again at the board in Maricopa County. Then we're going to peacefully assemble, and we're going to really have an open discussion, because, like I said, even the forefathers, they agreed in peace, but they didn't agree with how to get there, We're going to probably have to restructure each of our constitutions on a state-by-state level to handle the new type of enemy we're dealing with. Right now, there's not a lot in there about what to do with the media when they go rogue. There's not a lot in there about what to do when you've lost every court and you've lost your justice system. We need to accommodate for that in the new and improved constitutions for each republic. We have to learn from our mistakes. We have to admit our part in it, right? So the goal for us, for the People's Operation Restoration, Maureen Steele and I, my partner, she and I ran the nationwide walkout. We were part of the truckers convoy, obviously the Bonds for the Wind project, as well as now the People's Operation Restoration. We're trying to just get all the groups to come together. A lot of these groups aren't familiar with one another because they've been working in silos, but they all have, oftentimes complementary interests. So there's that, leaving all egos at the door and bringing all ideas to light, watching what works so we can learn from one another, what's working, what's not. I think all the truthers and all the P followers could start doing TikTok videos and promotional videos. Let's get this information out. Many people who followed this state national movement have been learning these things, but now the Maine needs to learn them. We need to put that stuff back out there, back out, recirculate it, teach, 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 And then the more you see people stepping up in bravery, it's like, I think it could be the new virus, because courage is so contagious. And when you stand up there and you feel that power and you see the reaction from them, I think we're just going to start winning and we won't stop winning.
Go ahead, Mark.
No, I was going to say, and that's the key to it. It's the hardest part, as we discussed before, is going to get the people to gather the courage to get up and take action. But once you get it, anybody who gets that first taste is going to want to do more. I don't want to spread it. When we're in New York, so you're dealing with, I don't even remember how many counties are in New York, but it's a lot more than Arizona. And to get a third would take a lot of work. But there are projects here. You start with the extreme local governments, and as they brought up before, every local government in New York has its own little breakdown in the county, in the town, in the incorporated village, and they've all got their little clans. So to break these things up is going to take a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of time, but the people have to invest the energy, and they've got to want to do it. That's going to be the hardest part.
Well, I think God's moving his pieces now, so we're going to gain courage naturally. I know this gets a little deep, but even 107 and others have come out saying we've been living in a controlled matrix. It's all been based on predicted programming, possibly looking glass, lots of dollars, lots of numbers. And it was controlled. But we're moving into divine intelligence, which means we're all intuitively and divinely guided. And as God moves his pieces, and as we rise in authority over the realm, I think you're going to be guided on when to take action. And I really recommend that among people. Like, there were certain cities when we were running Bonds for the Win that were way darker than others. And they would target the parents, you know what I mean? More so. Like, the local news would turn up against them, or, the schools, the teachers would be talking about them in class to the kids. Oh, they don't believe in being woke. They don't believe in, your freedom and your, race freedom and blah, blah, blah. So some are far more dark. So we have to use our intuition with these moves. These are moves and counter moves, and I just think that the White Hats are waiting for us to take that right action, to take that authority over the realm, because otherwise we will never hold it. And it is the year that we outsmart the devil. We learn his language. We learn how he manipulated us, and we say, okay, thanks, but no more.
And I want to remind people that, because if you look at this, I have to be honest right now, there are a lot of people in the movement, I think, because of the amount of time that's gone by and, the psychological warfare going on. There's a lot of people that are, I hate to use this term, but that are getting black-pilled right now, and they're getting frustrated and everything. And I want to remind people, when you look at something like this, and, again, I say this all the time on our podcast, don't judge. I love what you say about, the fact that it's not that we have an action problem so much as we have you call it a reporting issue. And I say that the same thing in different words all the time. Don't judge what's happening by what you see because of your 3 coworkers that you talk to every day, and because the 3 of them haven't figured it out yet, that nobody in New York has figured it out. I'm of the mindset, and Mark and I talk about this all the time, that you go out to a diner, even here in New York, no one wants to talk about this stuff, but if you actually break the ice and start talking about it, people are pissed off. People are aware. People are ready. They're looking for leaders. And when we look at something like this, and many people might think that number one, we're not starting from ground zero. People like yourself have been working on this for years. Okay? And remember that all the stuff we talk about on these other shows, right? All the different disclosures coming out, the movie that we talk about, the crazy stuff they're doing with Biden, all these different things that are being done to quote unquote show the people is creating this giant snowball. So what you're doing, you know what, with each county or city or whatever school board that gets served, the snowball just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So we're gonna reach a point, and it's up to us that it could happen in a year, it could happen in however many, but it's gonna be up to us because the more people that do it, you're right, Mark's right. New York's a big state, but guess what? That first county falls, the next one's gonna get easier, the next one gets easier, the next one gets easier and easier because it's gonna bring awareness. So I don't want people to look at this and say, "Oh my God, we got another job to do. It's going to take so long." No, a lot of the job has already been done behind the scenes, but this is now us taking all the knowledge and all the stuff that has been shown and disclosed and will be disclosed, and leveraging that with our neighbors that we think are asleep right now, but they're not. They might be asleep to this stuff, but they are not asleep to the fact that their government is corrupt as hell. Certainly, people more and more day by day are not asleep to what's going on with COVID, and they're certainly not asleep to what this government and everything that's gone on is costing them in their pocketbook. And every day, the more crazy stuff that happens, the more that's disclosed, the bigger that snowball gets. And with each one that falls, it's going to get easier and easier and easier, and more people are going to get on board. So,
and I think the White House are helping us from the other side. I mean, obviously, they pushed the legislature for the Form 6. They're trying to see if we're ready to even hold these offices. And obviously, we aren't, because they're just vacated. And we're not even going to hold it. We're not going to hold that position and call out their stuff from within. I don't know. There's a lot of tactics we could be taking in each state based on what the White Hats are feeding us.
Well, question on that. You've got New York over the past, my background, I spent 46 years in the mainstream media. Fake news.
Yeah.
Really fake news. And New York State committed what eventually became a national atrocity in a law that they passed in the Bail Reform Act. And I say national because other states went and did the same thing. When Trump and the White Hats initially went after the cabal, first thing they did was they cut off the head of the snake and then went after the lower minions. When you're dealing with some of these larger blue strongholds and you're dealing with the larger entities of the cabal, is it a wiser move to go after the head of the snake or to start chopping away at the tail?
See, I think it's our job to chop away at the tail while they take off the head of the snake. And I believe actually a lot of people want to go after the head, but I think the Supreme Courts, I think all the governors, I think all the people at the state level have been handled. They're in there to hold, the illusion that the deep state's still in control so they can finish out this whole sting op. They wanted to take every single one of them out. And I just want to address the fact that let's say you do go and take out a multi-quadrillion-dollar human trafficking ring. There's a whole lot of displacement of jobs. I mean, this takes time. It takes time to catch every one of or to follow and track wherever all the kids end up. They're not just coming over the border. They're tracking them all the way to where they land. They're tracking all the children that were there with them and whatever underground facility they end up in. I mean, they're dismantling a massive human trafficking industry. And this just has to take time. Even the voter fraud, I mean, even that was a massive sting up. And you could tell by the quality of photos and videos that were coming out. I mean, these were clearly, military cameras in the ceilings, et cetera. We knew where to look. How do we know where to look? How did Trump know that there was remember that little press conference he held in front of the Four Seasons? And it was so random, and it was like in Pennsylvania, the Keystone State, and he's saying, it's right across the street from a crematorium where they had just burned 600,000 of his own ballots. Obviously, they were tracked. How were they finding them underground, like in dumpsters, and how were they finding them in marshes and stuff like that, unless they weren't trackable? So I think that everyone's realizing now that this was a massive operation by the White Hats, and we have to now step up and do our diligence to disarm those that have been misled. Disarm them from vaccines, disarm them from their firearms. I'm sorry, but the police are armed, and they are definitely turning against the sovereign citizens. They don't understand this movement. And it's time to put them on yellow card. It really is. We have to give out lots of yellow cards. That's the only way you're going to change the dynamic. That's how you change it in your household. If the kids are running wild, you got to first lay down the law. You know what I'm saying? You can't just go and smack them around. You got to lay down the law first. You got to give them a choice to remedy. And that's actually part of the maxims of law. If you're going to bring any judgment, you have to give an opportunity to cure. And that's fair. And I think we as people, we don't even realize how much dishonor we're operating in. Everyone out there misrepresenting or misleading or making up lies about truthers are operating in dishonor because you're not giving each other an opportunity for fair trial. You're basically slandering them. It's all based on hearsay. They're not there to defend themselves. And so anyone out there that's spreading rumors about anyone is operating in dishonor, period. Most contracts are implied, expressed, or written. We're always operating in trust. Almost every contract we've ever negotiated is implied, which means there's too much for disagreement or misunderstanding. Things have to be written. Things have to be written from here on out. We need to understand what contracts, and we also can't keep obligating people for things they didn't agree to do. We live in a free will realm. How many times do you call someone and you just expect them to come do this for you or to come do that? You know, we have to start becoming more mindful about crediting or debiting someone else's account. So when you credit someone's account initially, you're bringing value to a relationship. We've just not been taught these basics. So we've been staying in this state of an argument. But I think this is the year where we all learn to communicate. And I don't know if everybody knows this, but in the common law, if I accuse you of stealing and I find out you're wrong, I owe you 3 times what I accused you of. If I find out you did steal, you owe me 10 times what you stole. That's the laws as it's laid down in the Bible. Now, I don't know if we end up adopting those worldwide, but we shouldn't be going out, you know what I'm saying, like talking badly about people unless we have evidence to prove in a court of law under a trial by peers, because otherwise we're all operating in dishonor. So again, there's just a lot of great learning lessons, I think, that I'm learning as I go. I'm learning how to set up a social compact so that everything's written. It's formalized. It's not expressed or implied. That way everybody knows what's expected of me. And when we get into this social compact, it's member driven. So I could leave and the members are still there. So long as they believe in the concept and they believe in the initiative, it can't fail for lack of a trustee. It can't fail for lack of a board member. It can't fail for the lack of someone leaving and coming and going, because it's member based.
Well, that's what I've said for a long time. The first execution I want to see is legalese.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
I mean,
what
we
I-
need to be simple.
And that's where, you know, again, so when people start digesting this information, that's why I want to remind everybody that, you know, many of you are looking for places to get involved. What can I do? I would point you right here and say this is a fantastic place to start. And if you're one of those people that is, you know, overwhelmed or you know, in poor health and is unable to actually do on the ground work, remember that this is just like everything else in this information war. This is an awareness campaign as well. So don't think that just because you're unable to actually go and do what Miki did that you can't do anything. Every last person that shares this video, shares her other interviews, shares her website, which I'll put up again on the screen now and we'll have in the description. The more we share this information, like everything else we talk about, the quicker and the easier it's going to be to get these systems into place. Because when you look at the entire rabbit hole of the admiralty law, the corporate construct, the straw man, you know, all that stuff, and you say to yourself, "Oh my God, how are we ever going to begin to unwind this?" Well, this is somebody right here on your screen right now that's doing it, that's leading the charge. And the more people we can send through the door behind her, the easier it's going to get at all levels. And I very much agree with you with what you said. I want to repeat what you said because I feel the same way. I don't want people to get discouraged and say, "Oh my God, does that mean we're starting over? This is a whole new thing, the Q No. I very much agree with you that I believe that the white hats have taken out the people at the top, the head of the snake. I believe, yes, all the way down to the state, and in some cases, perhaps county levels. We don't know, but this is now meeting them in the middle. right? So this doesn't change any of the stuff we've been talking about. But for those of you that have gone down that rabbit hole like myself, and every time I drive around just today and I see somebody getting pulled over for doing 35 and a 30 and there's nobody else on the road, and I'm like, this is ridiculous. How are we ever going to fix that? This is how. But we have to have, I'd say action is very important, but the awareness is even more important, because the more awareness we have of what's happening, then as people like Miki lead this movement and people start getting into place in different states and different counties, that's all well good. Like, in other words, we could have 50 people right now on a Zoom call, and each of us with 10 people ready to go in and serve every state. But if we don't have people behind us to fill in the blanks, like you said, they'll just bring in another straw man government and start over. So that's the key. To me, the awareness is actually, action's always important, but the awareness, like everything else in this movie, in this operation, it's the awareness, right? Trump could go and he could have removed the whole operation of the federal government on day one in 2017, but none of us were awake yet. So how would we know to backfill it and watch the same congressmen and judges again? That's the same thing at the local level. They could send military in every city, remove every school board. But what is that going to do? Because if the people that go to that school board meeting aren't aware and caring enough to go there after 2024 and 25 and sit there and make sure it doesn't happen again, then there's no point in cleaning it out. So just the long story short, I think for everybody watching this, that's going to watch this, is get involved where you can. But remember, no, it's like everything else we say, no amount is too little. If you're sharing this, if that's all you're able to do, fine, share it. If there's somebody else in another Patriot group that doesn't know this, send Michelle's link. But every last one of you that can do even just a little bit, the more this happens and the more of these podcasts, the more of these platforms, the quicker this is all going to take legs. And we're going to be able to actually really see the action that's necessary on the local level as well.
That's the old talk is cheap. Actions speak louder than words.
Yep.
I can't say it often enough. People have to get off their butts and start to aid if you want to see this go and you want to see it sustain.
Yeah, I hate to say it, but we do have to kind of talk about activism. And we've been kind of groomed to thinking that a march, or a strike or a convoy will move the needle. And it does move the needle when it comes to collective intention. It does. We can see we're not alone. We can see we're all waking up now. And the Great Awakening is their worst nightmare. But truly, the way that they moved us and they corralled us was with the mighty pen. And we have to fight back with the pen. We are not going to win this war without learning the lawfare that they took us out in. Does that make sense? And the good news is we have the high ground because we're operating in truth and they're operating in fiction. So like I said, I kind of break this down for people. Common law, you already know it. It's common sense. They're using affidavits. An affidavit is, you've been served an affidavit every time you got a ticket. It's an affidavit of fiction, but it has a 30-day timeline, right? If you don't respond within 30 days, you're considered guilty. What you don't know is they're basically opening a trust, bid, performance, and payment. They're selling you upstream. They're making anywhere from $2 to $5 million per traffic violation. Then they're pooling those just like they do our birth certificates, just like they do our mortgages, and they're selling them upstream as debt instruments because they see the value of debt. We have to see the same value of debt instruments, right? Because if a police officer pulls you over, he's asking for your corporate fiction. He's working for a corporate fiction, so it's an affidavit of fiction. Meaning you can do a conditional acceptance to get out of it, or you can just let him commit the crime. I recommend you let him commit the crime. And then you turn around and give him a notice. So in the notice, again, it's a 3-step process because we operate in honor, even though they don't. They gave you an affidavit of fiction, but you can turn around and give them an affidavit of truth, which means you're now up on the common law. Because you're operating as a living being. It says in the end time prophecy that the dead would rise in Christ because we're coming out of our corporation. We're coming into the Christ consciousness. We will all meet together again in the clouds because that's the kingdom of heaven where we're reigning in. Right? So, and that's Thessalonians. So basically we take it from the maritime playground, which is basically their dirty sandbox. We're back all the way to the 1 yard line there. But when you turn around and you serve that same officer with a notice first, because we are kind and we're willing to negotiate, right? Because we're not belligerent. Then you give him an affidavit of truth. Now, in this affidavit of truth, you could tell him, because he just created a victim, he's trafficking you. He may not have known it. You can say there's no evidence to prove you didn't just hold me at gunpoint. There's no evidence to prove you didn't just traffic my person. There's no evidence to prove that you don't work for a crime syndicate, aka foreign corporation, posing as my elected official. Now, when you say there's no evidence to prove, you're using a negative avertment statement. You're forcing him to bring evidence to the court, and he can't prove otherwise. So these are words no man can gainsay. Every time he pulls someone over, he's taking a liability of $1 million, and that's personal liability. It's not worth any paycheck. We are going to have to learn mercy. We need to educate the police. We need to give them the documentaries. We need to notify them of who they work for. 3 documentaries are amazing. JFK Rich Man's Trick, Thrive. James Rink has a great one about the banker fraud. I don't think anyone can argue these facts anymore. We know something's wrong. But then you got to give that opportunity to cure. You got to give that police officer an opportunity to sign an oath to we the people. Because this is our opportunity to do what's right, to walk in honor, and to give them a safe haven to land. Because we need them.
Well said.
Absolutely.
Well said.
I want to clarify one more thing I should
go ahead.
About the common law, just so I can get this out.
Yeah.
In the common law, we don't go to their corrupt courts. We go to our notary. That's our magistrate. So anything that's notarized is submitted to the court. Then we don't go to the common law courts to submit. We go to the registered mail. So we send via post. Post is our common law court. So it shows receipt, and they can't claim they didn't receive it because you have proof they did, right? So once again, you got evidence. And in the common law, it's man to man, living man to living man, or living woman to living man. The police officer is just doing what he's told, but he's still personally liable under common law. Because common law, I don't care who you work for. I don't care who you took bribe money for. I don't care. You're the one committing the crime. Therefore, you are liable, period. So I just want to spit that out really quick so everyone really understands the difference between the maritime courts, which are the lower law of the land, and common law, which is the law of the land. Maritime are just a bunch of pirates. They make their rules up on their pirate ships. There's no winning. It's like getting on the ship. They give you a sword. They say good luck while they rewrite the rules, and they're trading you under the ship's whatever gallows or whatever you call it. Do you know what I mean? We don't have any.
It's sleight of hand. It's all sleight of hand. That's right. That's right. Well said. So Michelle, any final words? Anything you want to leave us with? Again, we have. Please check out the website, thepeoplesoperationrestoration.com. We'll have all this linked in the description as well. And I believe on your website you have all your social media links and everything where they can follow you.
Trump came down that escalator, and he was very clear about his intentions. Then when he stood there in that inauguration speech, he said, I'm going to bring power back to the people as the military formed behind him. He had already done the first check move. Now we need to play checkmate. We need to put them all in check. It is inevitable. He gave us power. He brought back power to the people. Now we just have to claim it. We just didn't know how to take it back. We didn't know how to claim our power. I'm telling you guys, we have all the power. You don't have to watch in shock and awe anymore. We can take offense now. We can win. We already did win. You know what I'm saying? He already declared it. We're already been made much more safe than we ever were. It's just now we see the madness. Action, no action is inaction.
I love it.
Very well said.
I love it. Mark, any final words?
No, other than the fact, I've said it half a dozen times already. People have to go and start doing. Okay? We can lay it out. Miki can lay it out. Trump can lay it out. You've got to take action. You've got to get up. You got to do. And that's the only way we're all going to succeed. Unite, work together, take the action. Let's take back our country. Let's take back our world.
Yeah, so when we take right action, we have to do it in the knowing, the real knowing of what we're doing and how we're operating. So Ron Bouchard is an amazing educator. He's got a website called We the People, the number 2 and .us. I highly recommend you go learn from him. I also recommend you go and sign the Declaration of Independence, the one that Trump signed in 2020, just after he gave his speech under Mount Rushmore on July, was it 3rd or 4th? I think it was July 4th of 2020. Yeah. But he said he was going to go sign a special document. And Gene Decode had spoken about that document. And Jim Huguenin dredged it up. If you want to go read the new Declaration of Independence, it's on wethepeopledeclarefreedom.com. You can sign that declaration. You can see even more information about what's to come. But Jim is someone who's operating as the standing governor of Illinois. All he needs is support. He knows all this paperwork. He knows all this. All you got to do is go command your governor in Illinois. We just need people to form their social compacts, feel that confidence in what they're about to serve as far as paperwork, and then do it. Do it with authority. Do it with informed consent.
Fantastic. Well, Miki, thank you so much for doing this today again. And we're going to have all this information in the description below. And yeah, the last thing I would say to people, again, is just to remind everybody of that snowball effect. All these different websites we're putting up, check them out, share them, post them in your different groups. And, there's a reason that Q tells us nothing can stop what is coming. And that's what I mean by the snowball effect, right? The more this happens, the more we talk about this, the more we share it. We're already well into the process. You see things ramping up every day, every week. This is just another piece of it. And the more awareness that comes into operations and movements like this, the easier it gets for the next person, and the next person, and the next person. So
we're getting traction. And I think Jan Helper Hayes has really mentioned we're watching the general public. We're waiting for them to be ready. We're waiting for them to take action. I think the EBS will come right after we hit that tipping point.
Exactly, and that's it. That's what I think is an important point. Is to remind people that it doesn't change anything we talk about on these different platforms, but it absolutely is a critical piece of number one, showing the military that we have learned everything over these last years, that we're ready to implement action, and that as they present us publicly with what we know has been happening behind the background, that we are ready, willing, and able to carry on the civilian government the way it needs to be and make sure that this never happens again. And Miki, I just want to salute you and your group for everything you're doing, for your courage, for your leadership. I think you're a great voice to be carrying this forward. And again, I want to thank you for joining us today. Thank you so much.
Thanks, David and Mark. It was a pleasure to meet you.